Want to commence the meeting now or wait until we hear from Keith, or otherwise proceed?
May I ask Ms. Beard a question? Jamie, if we proceed with the minimum quorum of 4, any vote we have, does it have to be unanimous or?
Jamie?
Jamie's muted.
Jamie's on mute.
Yeah, am I unmuted?
Now you're
You're
back.
unmuted now, yes.
Okay. Yes, Jamie Beard, Assistant City Attorney, and that is true. When we have only the 4 based on the bylaws and policies that have been approved by the commission, it would require a majority of all 4 to be in favor for passing of a motion.
Thank you. Madam Director, I would suggest that we proceed since we have people who are looking in and we have applicants and staff who have worked hard on this stuff. So I'd suggest we go ahead.
Commissioner Wade, we can go ahead. I'm going to actually go ahead and leave Sam Sasuris a phone message too, and then I'll join you in just a second.
All right. Welcome to the May 12th, 2020 City of Grand Junction Planning Commission meeting. We encourage you to participate in this virtual meeting online, where residents can provide comments and or watch the live meeting at grandjunctionspeaks.org. I am seeing Commissioner Teskey, Commissioner Gatzos, and Commissioner Scissors besides myself. Are there any commissioners that I'm missing? At this point, no. So the first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes. Have the Planning Commission members had an opportunity to review the minutes from the meeting of April 28th, 2020?
Yes.
Yes.
If so, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes either with changes or as submitted.
I move to approve the previous minutes without changes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Teskey?
Aye.
Commissioner Gatzos?
Aye.
Commissioner Scissors?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So the minutes are approved as presented. We're now moving into that part of the agenda that requires a public hearing. Public hearings are conducted pursuant to the laws of the state of Colorado, the city of Grand Junction, and the regulations duly adopted by the Planning Commission of the city of Grand Junction. The purpose of this hearing is to receive information and testimony by all interested parties to enable this Planning Commission to make appropriate findings and reach the conclusions required to be made by law. Both a written and a video recording are made of these proceedings. Those who desire to be heard that have not already sent in written comments or left a voicemail for us to review this evening should provide written comments at www.
I'm trying to call you. Okay, hang on.
www.grandjunctionspeaks.org. Commission must receive these written comments before the conclusion of the public comment portion of any specific agenda item. When received, your comments will be read into the record by staff. The order of this hearing will be as follows. First, a determination concerning the adequacy of notification. Second, an acknowledgement that the commissioners have reviewed the presentations on grandjunctionspeaks.org, followed by a brief summary of the request by staff. Third, an opportunity for staff and the applicant to present any information additionally or evidence that has arisen from public comments or questions submitted from grandjunctionspeaks.org. Fourth, public comments received to date will be summarized and any audio recorded will be read into the record. Any new written public comments submitted through grandjunctionspeaks.org received prior to the close of the public comment section will also be read into the record. The Planning Commission may ask questions of the staff or applicant. Public comment section of the hearing may be closed after all public comment has been received. The applicant will be given an opportunity to respond to any information. The staff may respond to any statement of the applicant, the public, or the commission. The chair will then close the public comment portion of the hearing, and no further evidence will be accepted. After the closure, the evidentiary portion may only be opened again by a majority vote, which in this case would have to be all four of us. After the closure, the Planning Commission will begin its deliberation, which will end with the passage of a motion. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing before the City of Grand Junction Planning Commission to hear a request by S2E Development Company, LLC, for a comprehensive plan amendment from a commercial industrial future land use designation to a downtown mixed use future land use designation, and a rezone from C2 general commercial to R24 residential less than 24 dwelling units per acre for a 5.626 acre parcel located at 630 South 7th Street. Is the applicant here? And if so, would you please unmute yourself to verify?
Yes, hi, this is Marissa Edelstein from S2E Developments.
Thank you, Ms. Edelstein. Are you ready to proceed?
I am.
All right. Staff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Commissioner Wade.
Has required notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements?
Yes, as indicated in the staff report, notice has been completed in accordance with the code.
Thank you. With that, we can proceed. Staff, would you please introduce the exhibits for the record?
Yes, Commissioner Wade. The first exhibit is the development application dated March 31, 2020. The second exhibit is the maps and locations exhibit. The third exhibit is the staff report dated May 12, 2020. Fourth is the staff presentation dated May 12, 2020. Fifth is the draft ordinance concerning both the rezone and the comprehensive plan amendment.
Okay. Are there any additional exhibits that need to be added to the record that were not included in the staff report?
Yes, Commissioner Wade, those are the comments on gjspeaks.org.
Okay. Is there interest from the commission accepting into the record these new exhibits? Please signify by saying yes.
Yes. And no objection from me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Public comment. Let's see how many. Let's see if okay. Planning Commission has reviewed the planning commissioners. Have you all reviewed the pre-recorded presentations?
Yes.
Yes.
Give me a thumb. Okay. Then staff, would you please provide a brief overview of this request?
Yes, Commissioner Wade. Lance Gloss, Associate Planner for the City of Grand Junction. And I'll briefly share my screen here as I give you an executive summary. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So the applicant, S2E Developments, LLC, is requesting both a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezone for the same 5.26 acre property located at 630 South 7th Street. The first request is to amend the comprehensive plan future land use designation for the property from commercial and commercial industrial to downtown mixed use. Here you can see the future land use map. The second request is to rezone the same property from a C2 or general commercial zone district to an R24 or residential 24 dwelling units per acre zone district in anticipation of future multifamily residential development. The property is also currently within the downtown commercial corridor overlay zone district and is proposed to remain within this commercial corridor overlay zone district. The requested R24 zone district is not consistent with the existing comprehensive plan future land use map designation of commercial and commercial industrial, but it does work to implement the proposed designation of downtown mixed use. Multifamily residential development is currently an allowed use under the existing zoning, not because of that C2 general commercial base zoning, but because of the standards of the downtown commercial corridor overlay zone district. Here you can see the excerpt from the Title 24 of the code, which indicates that residential uses are allowed in that zone district as in the C1 zone, which allows residential up to 24 dwelling units per acre. Whereas the proposed zone district of R24 would allow for residential development without limit to density. Want to clarify that R24 might imply that 24 is the maximum, but here you can see the section of the code that indicates that there is actually no maximum density for R24. Rezoning would also have the effect of disallowing a range of commercial uses that are currently allowed on the property. As regards criteria for the comprehensive plan amendment, the request is consistent, according to staff analysis, with all 5 of the criteria in section 21.02.130C1 of the Zoning and Development Code, and is consistent with the vision, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan. And staff therefore recommends approval on that request. And on the request for rezoning, the following findings of fact have been made, which are that the request has met all 5 of the criteria in section 21.02.140 of the Zoning and Development Code, and is also consistent with the vision, intent, goals, and policies of the comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Gloss. Are there any questions for staff at this time from any of the commission? If not, does the applicant have anything they would like to add at this point?
No, thank you.
All right. At this time, I will open this public hearing up to any additional public comment that may have been received. Staff, has any additional comment been received via Grand Junction Speaks or via the telephone?
Commissioner Wade, I believe there is one additional comment that came in. You should have received comments from a Mr. Rich Roche, I believe earlier, a Mr. Bruce Milliard, a Mr. Ray Rickard, Mr. Rick Nisley, and a Mr. Michael Bradney Higginbotham. And there was an additional comment that came in from Mr. Higginbotham, which is actually very similar to his first comment, but it read, "Great addition to our little city. We must have and encourage this type of development to realize the urban potential of the downtown." That appears to be the only addition at this point in time through GJ Speaks.
Okay. Since there are no additional public comments, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing at this time. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff at this time from any planning commissioners?
Lance, I want to commend you for your report. And I also want to commend the applicant for their video. It was a very good presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Getsos.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if there are no additional questions, I'll close the public hearing and we'll turn to the planning commission for additional discussion and deliberation and/or a motion. I would like to say that I think that this is a project that is long overdue for downtown Grand Junction. I think it is well thought out. I think it fits with the goals of the downtown redevelopment area, and it will provide badly needed multifamily housing, and it will make the 7th Street corridor even better as it provides access from downtown to Las Colinas Park. So speaking on my own behalf, I'm in favor of approving this request as made. Anyone else have a comment?
I would agree with you, Commissioner Wade. I think that the work that we've done and the leadership of the DDA, especially with the vision that they had that we implemented October of 2019. This project coincides and fits that ideally, and I'm hoping it'll be a catalyst for more and more development to bridge the river and downtown as a transition. So I think it's good.
Thank you, Commissioner Getsos. Well, welcome, Commissioner Ayler.
Hello, sorry about that.
It's quite all right. I'm glad you're here. Keith, are you up to speed? We're almost to the motion point on item 1. Do you want to do you have anything you'd like to say?
I am up to speed and I didn't have anything in particular that stuck out. So
All right,
please
then,
continue.
either Commissioner Scissors or Commissioner Teskey, do you have any comments you'd like to make? If not, I would be not adverse to having someone make a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair, on the comprehensive plan amendment request for the property located at 630 South 7th Street, city file number CPA 2020194, and for the rezone request for the same property located at 630 South 7th Street, city file number RZN 2020-190. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of fact as listed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will take a roll call vote. Commissioner Teskey,
Aye.
Commissioner Getzos,
Aye.
Commissioner Scissors,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellers,
Aye.
and I am also an aye. The motion passes 5-0. Ms. Adelson, thank you very much. I hope that was as easy as you hoped it would be.
Thank you very much. This has been wonderful, and it's nice to meet you all virtually. Thank you for your support.
You're welcome. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a request by Mallard View LLC for comprehensive plan amendment from residential high mixed use 16 to 24 dwelling units per acre and residential medium 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre to village center and a rezone from RE residential estate to C1 light commercial on a total of 17.84 acres located at 785 24 Road. Is the applicant here, and would you, if so, would you please identify yourself?
Yes, I am here, and hopefully you can hear me. I've been having some difficulty with audio, so if someone can confirm if you can hear me, that'd be terrific.
Ms. Cox, we can hear you very well.
Great, thank you.
Staff, are you ready to proceed, Ms. Cox?
Yes,
Okay, staff, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, staff is ready to proceed.
Has notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements?
Yes, as indicated in the staff report, notice has been provided in accordance with our zoning and development code.
Thank you. With that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce the exhibits for the record?
Exhibit number 1 is my staff report dated today, May 12th, 2020. Exhibit 2 is the site location, aerial, future land use, and zoning maps. Exhibit 3 is the development application dated February 2nd of 2020. Exhibit 4 is the combined comprehensive plan amendment and zoning draft ordinance that the city council would review. Exhibit 5 would be my staff PowerPoint presentation dated May 12th of 2020. And Exhibit 6 would be the email that was received this afternoon via GJ Speaks from a Sarah Abraham.
Mr. Peterson, are there any additional exhibits to be added to the record that were not included in the staff report?
Not that I'm aware of, other than possibly the applicant's PowerPoint presentation that was also dated today, May 12th of 2020.
All right. Planning Commission, have you all reviewed the pre-recorded presentations?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Staff, that having been done, would you please proceed with a brief overview of the project?
Yep. Want to do a share screen as well.
Keith, you're making me dizzy.
Okay, this is the applicant for this request is Mallard View LLC is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment from residential high mixed use, which is 16 to 24 dwelling units per acre, as you can see on your screen. and also the residential medium, 4 to 8 dwelling units to the acre to a village center designation. And also the request is to also rezone the property from residential estate to a C1 light commercial zone district for the entire 17.84 acres. This property is located at 785 24 Road in anticipation of future development. As far as the findings of fact on the request for the amendment to the comprehensive plan, the request has met one or more of the review criteria of section 2102 130C1 of the Zoning and Development Code. However, the request is not consistent with the vision and goals and policies of our comprehensive plan. And then on the separate request for the rezoning of the property, the request has met one or more of the review criteria of section 2102 140 of our Zoning and Development Code. However, the request is not consistent with the vision, intent, and goals and policies of our comprehensive plan. And therefore, staff has been unable to find the request for the full 17.84 acres to have met the review criteria, and is recommending denial of the proposed rezone request and accompanying comprehensive plan future land use map amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Petersons. Are there questions for any of the staff or for Mr. Peterson by any of the commissioners at this point? Commissioner Gatsos.
Scott, I have a question for you. I read your staff report, and just to be clear, on your comp plan amendment, you said that the criteria 1 was not met, 2 met, 3 met, 4 not met, 5 met. But I wanted to ask you to elaborate more on your statement. I think it was under 5 on the comp plan amendment, that this applicant's request does not work to implement the or multiple goals and policies of the 2010 comp plan. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Well, the applicant is requesting, if I can do a share screen again. As you can see, the applicant is requesting basically to change the future land use map to village center for the full 17 acres. And with that, it will be accompanying zoning change to a C1 zone district. However, the C1 zone district, as you are well aware, is the majority of our retail service and retail zone district that the city has. And so no proposal has been presented. And if the C1 zone district is allowed for the full 17 acres, it would take away a residential component, or possibly take away a residential component for that property. As you can see, the majority of the property does have some type of multifamily or R8 to R24 density range per our 2010 comprehensive plan. But by zoning it to village center, there's no guarantee that we will get a multifamily development as part of that on that acreage.
Oh, so thank you, Scott. I only had, and then I had, can I ask one more question?
Certainly.
Scott, on the, somewhere on your report, I think you were concerned about the arterials in the C1 with the 24 road north of I-70 is a minor arterial, not a major arterial. How would that be influenced, or
Well,
how would that influence the C1?
Well, the C1 zone district, basically we want the C1 zone district on arterials and collector streets. And so technically 24 road would meet those requirements. However, when we get north of the interstate, we're going into more of a rural type of setting. There's really no commercial properties that have been developed north of I-70 on 24 road. There is C1 zoning across the street for the lavender farm and the small distillery. However, when you get onto the west side of 24 road, there really is no commercial development. It's still basically large acreage, rural, single family, type of land uses. So.
Any other questions for staff by any commissioner?
Yeah, this is Ken. I do have one. When I read down to your suggested motion, unless I'm reading this wrong, it looks like it says the suggested motion is that we forward a recommendation of approval to the city council.
Just to clarify that, Commissioner Scissors, per parliamentary procedure, we have to recommend in the affirmative. So that even though staff has recommended denial, the motion is in the affirmative, and so you either vote yay or nay on that requested motion. However, I do want to caveat that motion. There is some typos on the last sentence where it does say, I move that the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to city council with the findings of fact listed in the staff report. That should be a period after report and not and delete as presented by the applicant.
Commissioner Wade and Commissioner Scissors, if I may just clarify a little bit on the recommendation. So you'll see at the top of the staff report under the subject, and then that's followed by recommendation, is the staff's recommended denial of the comprehensive plan amendment and rezone request. And as Mr. Peterson just said, as we prepare a motion, those motions are always prepared in the affirmative. And then it's really up to the planning commission on whether that's supported by passage of the vote or via more than 4 members or not. So you will see that in all of our motion making is writing those motions in the affirmative.
Okay, I think I probably knew that and I just forgot it. Thank you.
Yeah, I was confused as well, Commissioner Scissors. Are there any additional questions for staff from the commission at this time?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So what in the commercial district, what residential density is allowed, the maximum residential density that's allowed in C1, Scott?
Commissioner Ehlers, the C1 zone district allows a density range between 12 as your minimum to a 24 maximum. So between 12 to 24 dwelling units to the acre.
So if am I thinking incorrectly that the existing residential zoning of 16, for the designation of 16 to 24, going to commercial isn't any mechanism to get higher residential than what they would already be in line to get. Is that correct?
That is correct. Through the C1 zone district would allow a maximum of 24 dwelling units to the acre.
So the contemplation that I have there that those questions sort of stem from is, as we go through and look at both our current comprehensive plan, which of course is what our purview is at this time, knowing that high density residential is something that there's not a whole lot of, both in zoning allocations as well as in real life. And we've identified that as a community as some place that we need to be more efficient and make better use of if we're to preserve our agricultural outskirts and not have to sprawl outward to meet densities. So we've also identified through the new comprehensive plan study, and I'm not referencing what the new comp plan is considering or anything else, but I am referencing some updated data that we can benefit from here tonight that has come from the new comprehensive plan, which is that we have enough vacant or undeveloped parcels with current, zoning and allocations to be able to start to address our future growth needs. And my concern is that if taking this thing all the way to commercial isn't, in some cases, commercial starts to allow you to get higher residential densities for multifamily along with the commercial side of it. In this case, that's not the case. So it's hard to justify why C1 for the entire property rather than just a portion of the property in order to preserve that intent of trying to capture more of our higher density residential. In what you've been through with this applicant and the considerations, is there anything that kind of turns that thinking on its head? Does C1 help promote some level of higher density residential that the current designations don't provide?
Commissioner Ehlers, there's really, I think what staff's concern regarding this application is the applicant is requesting a full C1 for the full 17 acres. And granted, multifamily is permitted in a C1 zone district, between 12 and 24. However, if it would go through the process and get rezoned to C1, there's no guarantee that property is going to have some type of multifamily component. And I think that's where the issue is. Yeah, staff would support a higher density, type of zoning for a residential, but if we turn it as a blank slate as C1 and, a Costco or whoever wanted to go there, we would lose that higher density, forever on that property. So that's where staff had the concern with this applicant.
Understood. Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? Mr. Getzos?
Scott, you were also concerned on the rezone. I think you had said that, and if you would elaborate on this, that we do have enough C1. If you go south at Community Hospital down 24, plus along 650, plus across the street, seems like there's adequate C1. So you said that zoning criteria 5 was not met.
Commissioner, yes, there's over 1,100 acres in the city limits that are zone C1. Some of that property is actually, right at the interchange there between 24 Road and I-70 that's been sitting vacant for, numerous years that has not developed yet. There are properties, farther down south, by Mesa Mall that have not developed, as a commercial, zoning on the properties. And so, so staff feels there is abundant of still vacant C1 zone in the immediate area, right next to I-70 that have not developed as a C1.
I have another question, if I may.
Certainly, Commissioner Scissors.
I was a little confused because I thought the applicant in the video said that they were not applying for a comprehensive plan amendment, just for zoning, and the staff's reporting that they're applying for both. Did I misunderstand that, or is there some discrepancy there?
Commissioner Scissors, basically the applicant, if the C1 zone would be approved, the applicant would still have to come back and do a comp plan amendment if that rezone was successful. So they would need to change the comp plan at some future point. However, that code section that the applicant is referencing basically allows the processing of a comp plan and rezone to be reviewed together. However, administratively, we need to amend the comp plan map through an ordinance as a part of an administration type of review in order to fully institute the proposed C1 zone district. So even though the applicant is requesting the C1 zone only, we have to step back and also amend our comp plan as part of the same process. So
Okay,
that code
thank you.
section that was referenced basically allows basically to review a comp plan and rezone together as one concurrent project, rather than taking, doing a 3-month process to change the comp plan and then another separate 3-month process to go through a rezone process. So it allows them to tie it together as one application.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Are there any additional questions for staff? If none, are there questions? Ms. Cox, are you there?
Yes,
Are there questions for the applicant at this point? First of all, before you do that, gentlemen, let me ask you, would you like to respond to anything that's been said so far, Ms. Cox?
Actually, yes, I would love that opportunity because I think we need to clarify a couple of things. We can start with the last issue that was raised by Commissioner Scissors, and that is the reference to whether or not the applicant is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment. In the project narrative that was submitted with this application, we specifically called out the code section 21.02.130, letter D, number 1, letter small b, 5. And that section of the code was put in the code with the adoption of the 2010 comprehensive plan and the update of the zoning code 2 or 3 months later. And it states that where the city of Grand Junction has sole jurisdiction, and that would be the case in this situation for this land use application, the director has the authority to, quote, allow the processing of a rezone application or request without a plan amendment when the proposed zoning is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan and the property is adjacent to the land use designation that would support the requested zone district. Now, in the past, I can give you just a real brief history, having spent a little bit of time with the city of Grand Junction myself. I can tell you that when the 2010 comprehensive plan was adopted, inadvertently, there were many parcels of land inside the city limits where the land use classification changed and it was no longer consistent with the zoning. So the city actually created non-conforming parcels by virtue of the brand new comprehensive plan. And in order to correct that, we as the city of Grand Junction took it upon ourselves to notify property owners that we would be rezoning property so that it would in fact be consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. And we did that for over 8,000 parcels. This particular parcel was not included in that. I'm not 100% sure why. The current zoning was consistent probably with the growth plan, but clearly it's not consistent with the existing comprehensive plan. And it was not included in that group of 8,000 parcels that the city proactively corrected on behalf of property owners. So that's one issue. The other issue, though, is that the language in the zoning code and the steps for the comprehensive plan, we were trying to conflate many different processes and speed up the development review process. And this was considered an innovative tool in the comprehensive plan. Prior to this, a citizen had to make an application for a comprehensive map change. That had to be fully completed. Then they had to submit a rezone application to change their property zoning. And then they could submit an application for a subdivision or some other type of development. So my recollection is that there was an effort made to try to speed up the process and not require people to have consecutive applications, but rather concurrent. And specifically, with a mention to the adjacency, we used to call it the adjacency rule. And that was if you wanted a zone district that was supported by a land use classification or even a zone district that was adjacent to your property, you didn't have to do both of those applications. You could go straight to the rezone application, which is exactly what this section of the code still reads. And if the rezone was approved, then at the time that City Council approved the rezoning, there was an ordinance that was prepared by staff whereby they also changed the comprehensive plan's future land use map. So that's why we applied for the rezone application. Our property is adjacent to the Village Center mixed-use land use classification. The C1 zone is one of the zone districts that implements that land use classification, and therefore is a sort of a way to expedite the process. We submitted an application that went straight from, you know, where we're at now to the rezone application without the comprehensive land use change in the future land use map. And I'm not saying that the map doesn't have to change. I'm just saying that back in 2010, for the very few applicants that took that route, it was the city that prepared an ordinance to change, in effect, change the map if the rezone was found to be appropriate. So that's one thing I think that if you have more questions about, we ought to flesh out, because that section is in the code, and if it's not meant to be used, it shouldn't be in the code. The other thing I want to talk about is that the C1 zone district is found in the city's zoning code, listed as a mixed-use zone district. It's absolutely meant to be a mix of commercial, sales, services, and residential. So the city doesn't lose out on an opportunity for residential development, as Commissioner Ellers was talking about. And in fact, it's rather high residential. It's the kind of residential development that you're only going to be able to accomplish with multifamily apartment condominium style housing. It's high density residential. The applicant's thought is that really this is an ideal zone district to implement a need in that part of the community that is experiencing growth, as evidenced by annexations and subdivisions and an expansion of the Beehive residential assisted care, which is not strictly residential. But that in fact it would be a mixed use opportunity where you could have offices, sales, services, and you could have high density residential. And to speak to the point where someone said, is there any guarantee? No, there's not a guarantee, because the request before you is for a rezone, and your review is whether or not the zone district and all of the permitted uses that include high density residential are going to accomplish what the city's intent is. I guess the other thing I would say is that, you know, we have addressed the rezone criteria. Because we did not specifically request a comprehensive plan amendment, we did not address those criteria, but in our report, we did find that, in our opinion, there were 2 or 3 goals and guiding principles that this request does in fact meet. That it supports the development of centers where people can live and work and shop in close proximity and reducing traffic. That it's sustainable growth patterns. It's along the Marnier Arterial Corridor that the C1 is meant to implement, so that people coming off of the interstate can make a stop and take advantage of commercial opportunities, you know, or they can be living closer to where, you know, perhaps they're working. So I think that's all I've got by way of wanting to make particular points, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions for Ms. Cox at this point? I have one, but, well, let me go first, Keith, and then you. Ms. Cox, the one public comment we had about this expressed a considerable amount of concern, as we've seen before in this area, as it relates to the streets and the traffic flow and what this kind of a commercially zoned property could potentially put in there. How would you address that?
Well, I think that's a great question. And when we had our neighborhood meeting, we had it back in a time when people were meeting physically together. We actually had a very well attended neighborhood meeting, and we did have questions come up about traffic. So 24 Road is the minor arterial. Their concern was that there would be more traffic on that. I don't think that there is going to be a problem with traffic. This particular project and this site, when it develops, it's going to be required to dedicate 25 feet of additional right-of-way for 24 Road improvements in that area. And I think any type of development that is, situated on this property, it's going to be reviewed by the development engineers and the traffic engineers, and certainly there'll be traffic impact studies. At least at the time when we had development engineer input during the meeting, general meeting for this process, we didn't see any issues that were raised that could not be addressed or mitigated through the development process when an application is actually submitted. And that would have been for commercial development, residential development, and or, a mix of the two.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant from commissioners? Mr. Ellers, you had one.
Yeah, thanks. Ms. Cox, if coming from a perspective of really scarcity when it comes to high density residential, particularly in this area that's been identified as having close proximity to infrastructure and transportation of all sorts, how, if we go commercial, I understand that there's the opportunity for residential to occur, but from the community planning perspective, preserving that designation of a residential, a high residential and mixed use, we could accomplish the same goals of getting commercial opportunities in there with making a portion of this along 24 Road commercial and preserving a portion of it in that high density residential. And that would ensure that some high density residential happens, and through further processes, including something as the dreaded PD or something like that, we can start to blend and make it work. But in going to a C1, ultimately my question for you is there a mechanism that I'm not thinking of on how to preserve or ensure that our community will have some high density residential in here, considering the lack thereof, that kind of designation and zoning elsewhere, and the need for it to be in these areas?
Sure. That's a terrific point, terrific question. So there's a couple things to think about here. Everybody realizes that the C1 is a straight zone. And so when the commission is considering their recommendation, obviously you're going to consider the approval criteria. You're going to take a look at what's permitted, what's allowed in that zone district, and you're going to decide whether or not you think that's an appropriate zone district as requested, because you don't have any guarantees. You don't have a companion site plan or a subdivision, and you won't unless you have a planned development. So when you're looking for guarantees, if that's what you're looking for, a couple of suggestions. One, you might hope that the PD request comes in. That's not what this is. We've requested a straight zone. Two, because this is a unique piece of property with 3 separate land use classifications, certainly there's an opportunity there to maybe do a different kind of configuration. So perhaps the frontage on 24 Road might be the more logical place that you suggest would be strictly commercial. The balance of, some balance of that property might be residential. That might be one way to ensure, that you have that. And then the last one is just to simply, zone it maybe just straight residential. Certainly our applicant would really prefer that not be the case. They have a very strong desire for flexibility to be able to have some commercial, to be able to have that residential. How does the city get a guarantee? Well, that's hard to do with a straight zone. A suggestion might be that if the city would consider the 24 road frontage portion to be the commercial, my request would be that they include that area, the frontage, which is 325 feet maybe, that they include sufficient, lost my screen there for a minute, that they include sufficient space and acreage that you could actually have a development, and that would be about 3 acres. I say that because this site would have 25 feet of road right-of-way to dedicate on 24 road. There has to be an internal street for internal access. That's another 44 feet of right-of-way that you would take out of a development site. You need to have areas for detention. That'll take it out. And there will be buffering, screening, and landscaping on a commercial site, which would include even, an apartment complex. So, in my opinion, to design a functional site, you would need 3 acres, at least in that 24 road area, in order to be able to make a commercial site function. And that would still give you the opportunity to have mixed use as anything that's allowed in commercial. But then the alternative is you could consider perhaps maybe more of a residential for the portion, beyond that 3 acres. And it is 17, almost 18 acres. That's another way to do it.
Any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Mr. Gatzos.
Ms. Cox, thank you for being here. Wouldn't the mixed use give the applicant the most flexibility?
Yes.
Mixed use zone?
Yes, the C1 is classified in the city zoning code as a mixed-use zone. It's listed in your zoning code as a mixed-use zone district. So that's why we consider that to be a mixed use. It allows retail, sales, service, recreation, residential, high-density residential.
Yeah,
So
my question is, don't we have, Tamara, don't we have a mixed-use zone? Or
Commissioner Wade, Commissioner Gatzos, we certainly do. We have a variety of different mixed-use zone categories. And Ms. Cox is certainly accurate that this one is classified as a kind of umbrella mixed use. Like all of our mixed use zone districts, there's no requirement that residential be built as part of it. And I think that's where staff and as Mr. Peterson has represented, where the challenge in supporting this request has come in is so much of this property is designated for residential type of uses that without having a zone district that ensures that there's residential, staff could not support the request. So maybe a back way of saying that there is mixed use. This is one type of mixed use zone category with its own set of uses in the use table.
Thank you for your clarification. I'm not a planner, and I thank you. So that makes perfectly sense. And I do still see the staff's point that putting 17 acres totally C1 is a little, maybe a problem with residential.
Commissioner Teskey, did you have a question?
I did have a question for the applicant. I think, Ms. Cox, thank you for your comments. If I understood the answer to your question earlier, I just wanted to make sure, as you were talking about ways for the city to obtain a guarantee for residential development on this property, it sounded like you were suggesting maybe we tonight could make some decision other than to vote up or down the exact application that's been presented by the applicant. And I'm just trying to understand if that's what you meant or if you just were talking about options.
I guess it's both. I thought the question was how could you achieve certain goals? And certainly, one way is through a planned development. However, that's not the request before you this evening. The other way is how you zone this property. And because there's 3 land use classifications on this property, it's particularly unique, in my opinion, in that it would allow Planning Commission and City Council to certainly consider the request that we have made, and or, you know, perhaps there's a compromise where, you know, based on the land use classifications, C1 is consistent, and maybe C1 is very appropriate on that 24 road frontage, and maybe, you know, because of the other land use classifications, it's also possible to assign a zone district to support that residential land use classification. I think I want to just say here, though, that is a little challenging. It's not impossible, and I've seen it done before. This is one piece of property, 3 land use classifications, and split zone property does happen in the city, but it's a little tricky on a single piece of property. So I guess if that were to happen, the dimensions and the acreage would have to be very specific if that were to occur. My concern, number 1, being that commercial, to be viable in this area, would have to be, for this property, at least 3 acres, because of all of the things that, the right-of-way that has to be dedicated and the things that have to actually, you know, basically come off the top. And that you have, you know, buffering and screening that you need. But that, yes, one of the ways, I think, a solution, an option, is to consider taking advantage of those 3 land use classifications and saying that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Perhaps there's a compromise, you know, utilizing those 3 land use classifications that would support everybody's goals.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, thank you, Ms. Cox, if you'll hold yourself there.
Certainly.
At this time, I'll open the public hearing up to any additional public comment that may have been received. Staff, has any additional comment been received on Grand Junction Speaks or via the telephone during this hearing?
Commissioner Wade, if you don't mind giving me a minute, I've been toggling back and forth on my screen here to maps and staff reports. So give me a minute and let me just double check.
Okay.
So I am seeing nothing new come in. However, perhaps Commissioner Wade, a confirmation that those commissioners that are participating this evening have seen those comments by Sarah Abraham. If not, I'm happy to read them into the record.
Have all the commissioners present this evening read the comments that came in to Grand Junction Speaks?
Yes.
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 Yes. So I don't think there's any necessity to read them into the record. Planning
Great.
Director.
Then we have not received anything either via Adjacency Speaks or a phone message left today. So thank you.
So at this time, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing. Ms. Cox, there's nothing, I think you've responded to almost everything in the initial discussion there. If anyone has any additional questions, I'll go back to the commission and say, having listened to Ms. Cox, and listened to Mr. Peterson, are there any additional questions from staff for either, or from the commission for either staff or the applicant at this time?
I do, I think.
Commissioner Teskey.
Thank you. I'm not sure exactly if this is a question for Jamie or for Tamara or for who, but I'm taking a look at this code section that was referenced by the applicant, and I'm trying to understand what's happening with the actual scope of the request relative to the comprehensive plan amendment. And as I read the provisions here of this section 2102-130 D1 Romanet 5, that the indication is that the director has the authority to allow the processing of a rezone application without a plan amendment under certain circumstances. Am I understanding then that that's not what's happening? That the director is not allowing that, or what's happening really under this code section?
Excellent. I think I'm gonna actually ask Ms. Beard to weigh in on this first, and then I can follow up afterwards, if that's all right, Jamie.
be my understanding from the information that I have available is that no, the director did not find that this should move forward without a comprehensive plan amendment. Part of that would be is because from a legal standpoint, this section of the code, and when it first came up in dealing with it, the advice normally is do the comprehensive plan and do the rezone at the same time. As I believe Lisa indicated, there was or it might have actually been Scott, there was a time period when we did the comprehensive plan amendment, required that to go through first, and then it would take approximately another 3 months before then the rezone would actually go for a final hearing and be able to be considered. And when we looked at the 2010 code, they were trying to find ways to minimize that time period. But based on how it ended up getting written, the advice was from legal is you really don't go forward with a rezone without dealing with the comprehensive plan amendment, because if you rezone it, before you can get any applications that are approved, you still have to be able to change the comprehensive plan, because one of the criteria for almost every development application, if not every development application, is that it must be compliant with the comprehensive plan. So at some point, that comprehensive plan has to be dealt with. And so the suggestion that we've always had, and we think the best legal standpoint, is take the comprehensive plan forward at the same time that you take the rezone forward. They can be done at the same time, saving time, which is part of what the purpose to the change of the code was, but at the same time, keeping things consistent so the developer, applicant understands, and others what they have the right to do or not do on a particular piece of property if the city council should approve a rezone. In this instance, as I understand it, the only other possible comprehensive plan designation is a village center that would allow for the C1 in this particular area. Since there really weren't a few other options to be looking at based on the way our comprehensive plan is set today, then there really wasn't a reason to wait to take forward the comprehensive plan amendment. Because if you get to a point that you would find that a C1 rezone is appropriate, then for the most circumstances, the criteria that would fit that C1 is also going to fit the same reasoning as to why you would then go ahead and change the comprehensive plan. So it seems most appropriate, and I would say based on the fact that staff is bringing it forward with the comprehensive plan amendment, that the director decided no, it needed to go forward with both.
Thank you. I think that clarifies it for me.
Are there any additional questions for staff or the applicant at this time?
I have a question for staff. Again, I'm struggling with giving up the assurance on behalf of the community and the city to see a high density residential and to get density involved in this area where that designation exists. So I'm very grateful that Ms. Cox articulated some of the options out there, because the last thing I'd like to do as a commissioner is project any sort of design considerations or otherwise. But I'm very fond of an idea where along 24 Road, the village center designation from the comprehensive map could be changed, and that would be adding, if you essentially took where the current village center boundary is and just came straight south along 24 Road, that would add another 4 acres to the existing 2 acres of village center that exists on this site, for a total of 6 acres. Now, rather than just talking about a designation of how many acres, I think the depth and dimensional elements of that corner of village center that exists on this property, but is separated between this property and 24 Road by the 2 other lots, that some consideration could be given to the right dimensional depth to make that a developable piece of property with the flexibility the village center provides, should it then be asked for a rezone of C1. That would leave us with roughly 10 or 11 acres of residential high mixed use designation, and at the low end of 16 dwelling units per acre, you're talking around 160 units, and that seems to be going much beyond that has been a threshold that's met some resistance out there, but it would be a good tool for us as implementers of the master planning, both the existing one and the upcoming plan, to capture some of that. So my question with that is for staff more than anything on what would be the most efficient process, should this be a concept that the rest of the Planning Commission is agreeable to as well, that doesn't set back, does the least amount of setback and time damage to the applicant to be able to move forward? Would it be a recommendation of an approval to some sort of village center, but not approving the rezone to C1? Or would it be wiser to ask the applicant to revisit this based on the comments that have been put forth here? Or do we simply need to restate these our issues for the record so that city council can then make the ultimate decision should the applicant continue on to city council? I'm looking for efficiency because I don't think no is the answer here. But yes to the whole thing being commercial is something that I would have a hard time getting behind because it doesn't preserve any of the residential density with assurance.
Commissioner Wade, Commissioner Ellers, I'm happy to take that first, and certainly if there's other staff that want to join in or add to, certainly we'll let them as well. But maybe taking that in part and parcel, maybe a little bit of history would be helpful too, is I do believe at the staff level, we have spoken with the applicant about the ability for staff based on the criteria to support some level of rezone to C1 here. I believe the direction we did receive was that the applicant at least at that point in time was interested in continuing to pursue the full site as a C1 rezone. And so that is what you have in front of you this evening as an application to consider. That said, I certainly appreciate, I think, your sensitivity to timing and trying to be expeditious. However, as Ms. Cox alluded, I think that the site is complex and there's a lot of dimensions to it going on. Certainly just its depth and size of lot certainly makes it more complex than maybe another rezone that we see throughout the city. To that end, my suggestion would be that you take action on the request before you tonight. However, if there appears to be support for an alternative, that certainly can be expressed in your deliberation or discussion. And perhaps that would provide some good direction to Ms. Cox and her applicant about how perhaps a different request may be supported in the future should they choose to resubmit. They certainly could choose to move through the process on the current course as well. So those are a couple options to consider tonight. I do have, maybe as I said, but maybe more said directly here, is some reservation about trying to set a specific parameter and area for rezone this evening without consideration by the applicant and a certain kind of understanding of what their needs or requests are more directly to the kind of spatial or acreage that may be assigned that. In addition, clearly I would want us as staff to be able to take the time to review a new request based on the findings and the criteria in front of us to make sure that we could justify and support that finding as well.
Mr. Ehlers, do you have any additional questions?
No, I don't. I think Ms. Allen is spot on there with there's plenty of conversation and ways to get there that at least coming from my perspective, I could very much support on this, ranging from perhaps zoning the whole thing as mixed use to preserve some sort of a residential or just a portion of it as C1, but without the applicant being the one that really comes in and says, this is what would work for us. I would not want to impose anything. So being able to make a vote on what we have here, I'm prepared to do, and also will take whatever opportunity is most appropriate to emphasize that I am in favor and think that some level of commercial would be appropriate here. But I cannot get behind losing the assurance that that residential at a high density will occur here.
Thank you, Commissioner Ehlers. If there are no more questions at this point for applicant or staff, I will close the public portion of the hearing and turn it back to the commission for deliberation and discussion, and then potentially action on the motion as presented before us. Commissioners, who would like to be first?
I'll go ahead and make a few comments. I want to support Commissioner Eller's position. I won't repeat it all. But I think he's got it pretty much spot on, and I appreciate Director Allen's explanations. I think there's plenty of opportunity for the applicant to come back to us with a proposal that satisfies both the need for residential and a reasonable amount of commercial facing the road. And rather than agree to something we really don't want, it'd be better just to wait for a more appropriate application to come in.
Thank you, Commissioner Scissors. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Getsos.
I'm in favor of some type of a hybrid that would allow some commercial. I'm in agreement with the staff report. I cannot approve tonight if I'm asked, which it looks like I am going to be asked, because the applicant wants a full C1 zone. I can't support that, but I would be supportive of trying to work that out. Of course, the applicant doesn't have to, it's just he can apply for what he wants. So.
Okay, Commissioner Teskey, would you like to add anything?
Oh, I suppose I'd just echo the comments from you all already. I think supporting some level of commercial activity on this site makes sense, especially given the adjacency to the existing village center on the other side of the street, and that some part of this property is zoned within that village center future land use map with respect to our future land use categorizations. However, the main bulk of the property is zoned with future land use map designations related to high density residential use, with a focus on that type of use, and in fact a guarantee, to pick on that word a little bit, of that type of use. And so, yeah, with respect to a request for a straight zone to C1, I think that's too much C1 zone on this property to implement the master planning documents that the city has adopted. And so we would need to see some other application that gave some residential component to what was going on in the property, whether that's by straight zone or otherwise. And of course, we can't do that tonight by, drawing a line on a map somewhere or suggesting that the size of the frontage should be X or whatever. That's a much more complicated planning process that's going to require a more detailed review and appropriate application.
Thank you, Commissioner Teskey. As for myself, I echo the comments of my fellow commissioners, but I would also like to say for the record that while it is certainly possible for us to consider a compromise of that nature, it is not the duty of this planning commission to decide how a particular piece of property is divided for zoning purposes. That's not our expertise. That's not our responsibility. So I too would support some kind of compromise, but I cannot support something that doesn't guarantee a straight zone designation, that doesn't guarantee us high density residential on the property somewhere. So at this point, I would like to ask Director Allen a question. The motion we have that is in our packet is an affirmative motion. If we vote affirmatively on that motion, we're voting to deny this zoning and comprehensive plan request. Is that correct?
So Commissioner Wade, so if someone proposes or makes a motion as written in the recommended or suggested motion, what would happen is you would call for a vote, and assuming that what you've represented, people would either support it or it with the a vote or a I vote or a nay vote. And if it gathers more nay votes, in this case, I think we need 4 nay votes, then the motion would fail essentially, and it would create a recommendation of denial to the city council. Does that make sense?
No, I think that's, if we vote in the affirmative on the motion as presented, as I understood it with the findings of fact, we're voting to deny it.
So I believe the current motion, let me pull it up here in front of me. So as normal, if you were to read the suggested motion, which is to move to recommend approval of that, if people cast their votes for A's on that, or ayes, then that would be approved if that was a majority vote, or I should say a 4-person vote. If you voted nay on that, the motion would then fail to be approved, and that would tender a denial recommendation from this commission to the city council.
Jamie, is that right?
Yes, if I'm reading Scott's prepared suggested motion correctly, which I apologize because unfortunately when it printed, it didn't quite print the whole thing, but it appears that he has written it the way we normally do, which is with the asking the planning commission to approve the request as made by the applicant. So what they're requesting is to allow it to be zoned, the whole property, a C1. And with that, staff has included then the comprehensive plan amendment, which would then change it to a village center to allow a rezone of a C1. If that is not what you're wanting, then you would not vote in favor of the motion. Do I read the motion correctly?
Yeah,
That
yes.
is accurate.
Yeah, that is accurate representation. So if you vote yes, you're voting for the C1 zone district.
Thank you. That's all we need to know.
If you don't want the C1 zone district, then you vote no.
Okay. At this point, is there further discussion amongst the commission, or will somebody bring forward a motion?
I wonder a little bit, and perhaps this is what's bothering you, Commissioner Wade, is the motion suggests recommendation of approval with the findings of fact listed in the staff report, and the findings of fact listed in the staff report recommend denial.
Yeah,
So
that's what I don't understand.
If we recommend approval with the findings of fact in the staff report, I think we're sending a strange message.
And I
Yeah,
believe
that's why I don't understand it, because if we recommend what the staff says and vote yes on the motion, we're recommending a denial.
but it's also includes language as presented by the applicant. So I believe earlier, where part of the confusion maybe is when Scott mentioned changing the motion, instead of changing it to delete that portion that said as represented by the applicant, it should have been with the findings of facts as presented by the applicant, and deleting that portion as a part of the staff report, as listed in the staff report.
I guess that's sort of what I was wondering when I heard our staff talk earlier about removing the as presented by the applicant. It seems like instead we should be removing the findings of fact listed in the staff report and instead move for approval as presented by the applicant. And then the motion, I think, would work the way we were just describing it. An I vote would move that forward with the recommendation of approval, and a nay vote would be the opposite, recommend disapproval of that request.
That's my portion of the motion that's missing.
Understood. Thank you.
Before one of us ages out completely, is there a suggested motion from a member of the commission?
Before we do that, I do have one other comment. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties there before. In kind of my comments thus far, I've used a lot of the I think and I feel, and I want to make sure that I state for clarification that I'm looking at the criteria, and based on the criteria and what we've seen in the staff report, that's why I can't recommend approval here, and that my comments are intended to suggest a scenario that could be supported and that I think could meet the criteria for moving forward. So I think that was known, but these hearings are known to have a lot of I feel and I think, and I don't think that that's ever appropriate from our position. So I wanted to clarify that for the record. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Ehlers. Is there a commissioner who wishes to bring forward a motion?
I have a question, please. Jamie, did Commissioner Teskey's concerns on the present motion as written in the staff report address his concerns? Because I think they were all of our concerns. Do we need is that the motion we should propose and then vote as is, or do we need to clarify that motion?
The motion that is in the staff report actually had two parts to it, and part of that does need to be eliminated. In this instance, the portion that refers to as listed in the staff report is the portion that needs to be eliminated, and yet still include as presented by the applicant. So you would be relying on your facts and conclusions to approve this motion based on what's been presented by the applicant rather than what was specifically presented by the staff.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
I would be so happy.
Mr. Chairman, on the comprehensive plan amendment from residential high mixed use 16 to 24 dwelling units per acre and residential medium 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre to village center, and a rezone from RE residential estate to C1 light commercial, city file numbers RZN 2020-100 and CPA 2020-10. I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to City Council with the findings of fact listed as presented by the applicant.
Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Teskey,
Nay.
Commissioner Gatsos,
No.
Commissioner Ehlers,
Nay.
Commissioner Scissors,
Nay.
and I myself am a nay vote as well. The motion fails 5-0. Next item on our agenda is to consider request by the City of Grand Junction to amend Title 21 of the Grand Junction Municipal Code regarding requirements for neighborhood meetings. Now I have to ask a procedural question. The applicant is obviously the city. Do we have to give public notice of a change like this, Tamara?
Commissioner Wade, we do public notice. It's not posted on a property because there is no property, but we do.
There's no property posted on, but it was posted in City Hall.
In the Sentinel, and certainly it's posted as part of our agenda.
All right. The applicant is the city. The applicant and the staff are one and the same. So Ms. Ashbeck, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, I am.
It's notice been completed pursuant to the city's noticing requirements.
Yes, as indicated in the staff report, the notice was provided according to the code.
Thank you. With that, we can proceed. Would you please introduce the exhibits for the record?
Exhibit 1 is my staff report dated May 12th, 2020, today, which does include the proposed ordinance. And Exhibit 2 is the presentation, also dated today, May 12th.
Are there any additional exhibits to be entered in the record?
I don't have any, no.
Thank you. Planning Commission, have you all reviewed the pre-recorded presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Staff, would you please give us a brief overview of the request?
Sure. Currently, the Zoning and Development Code requires an applicant to conduct a neighborhood meeting pertaining to a proposed development. The meeting is intended to produce a better product or a better project because it will create a dialogue between neighbors and the developer prior to the application being made. The code identifies the types of proposed development for which neighborhood meetings are required, whether they're approved administratively or approved by an action by the Planning Commission or City Council. Presently, the proposed development applications that are reviewed and approved administratively, the code states that a neighborhood meeting is required for any subdivision except for simple subdivisions and major site plan applications. And staff is proposing to add 3 other types of applications that could be exempt from the meeting requirement or would be exempt from the meeting requirement. Those three are: one, continuous phases and or filings of an approved preliminary subdivision plan. Number two would be subdivision applications for which a neighborhood meeting was held for a concurrent application such as a rezone. And the third type would be an application for subdivision that is a final development plan that is consistent with a previously approved outline development plan for which a neighborhood meeting had been previously held. In the case of applications for development that require action by you or city council, the code presently is silent on the specific types of applications for which a neighborhood meeting is required. It simply states that if it has an item that needs a public hearing, you're required to do a neighborhood meeting. Due to the inconsequential nature of the proposal, staff is proposing an exemption to the meeting requirement for the vacation of easement applications. There are no criteria for a code amendment in the code, but staff finds that these amendments would be useful to clarify our regulations and streamline the development process, and therefore recommends approval of the request.
Thank you, Ms. Ashbeck. Are there any questions for staff at this time by Commissioner?
Yeah, I would have one question. But first of all, Kristen and staff, thank you. The presentation is really clear and this really looks like great work. I have a question on the continuous phases and filings section. Is there any time limit on that? In other words, sometimes we've seen projects that have extended out over longer periods of times than anticipated because of various circumstances. And it seems it's possible that by the time it finally comes up, it's still, the original plan hasn't changed, but what if so much time goes by that things around it have changed that might affect the neighbors? So is there contemplation, or is there any possibility that for a certain period of time it would kick back to requiring a neighborhood meeting?
There certainly is. I believe in the language proposed is that there sort of need to be some milestones met within a 6-month time frame. So after you approve a rezone, there had been a neighborhood meeting for that rezone, they must submit the next phase, maybe a preliminary plan, within 6 months of that, and so on. So there's sort of a 6-month time frame within each phase.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Commissioner Wade, Commissioner Scissors, it's the last sentence in the draft ordinance of that subsection, Roman numeral 4IV, where it says the previous application must have been considered in a public hearing no more than 180 days prior to that application. So that is, as Ms. Ashbeck just said, at the 6-month window to be able to file in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was probably the case and I just wasn't quite getting it.
Any questions from other commissioners for staff?
Just for the sake of the record, I'll ask the question of, for these particular elements that we're removing the requirement of the neighborhood meeting, Ms. Ashbeck, can you confirm that it does not in any way preclude any member of the public from participating in the process, just that it may require them to do so via any other methods such as email, in-person meetings, direct contact, or otherwise, that it just would take away the neighborhood meeting requirement and the time constraints related to that for these particular things, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner Ehlers.
Thank you.
The neighbors will certainly still, in all of these cases, still be notified when an application is received. And at that time, they are given the opportunity to, as you said, become more informed about the project, ask questions, make comments. I have been invited for example, by a group of neighbors to come speak with them or walk the site with them, and they will still have those types of opportunities.
Any additional questions for staff? If not, I will open the public hearing up to any additional public comments that have been received. Have there been any additional comments received on Grand Junction Speaks or via the phone during the period of this hearing?
Commissioner Wade, we have not received any public comments on this item tonight.
Thank you. Then I will close the public portion of the hearing, and turn it back to the Planning Commission for additional discussion. Anyone have anything they'd like to add?
I have no further comment.
Doesn't sound like it. Then that having been said, I would accept a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion here if I can read this small print. Mr. Chair, on the zoning and development code amendments ZCA-2020-173, I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation approval to City Council with the findings of fact listed in the staff report.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Teskey,
Aye.
Commissioner Scissors,
Aye.
Commissioner Redlers,
Aye.
Commissioner Gatzos,
Aye.
and I am also an aye, so the motion passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. I believe that concludes all our business, does it not, Madam Director?
Commissioner Wade, fellow commissioners, we don't have any other business, but I did want to just give you two reminders. One is that we will have a workshop next Thursday, so please make sure that's on your calendar. And then, as we discussed at our previous workshop, we will be holding for the first time in some time an in-person Planning Commission hearing on the 26th of May. As we discussed, we will be providing to our public number of means to participate virtually. Certainly GJ Speaks being our premier function, where they can view the video in advance from both staff as well as the applicant, and then provide any comments through that forum for those that are unable or uncomfortable in attending that public forum. So just wanted to remind you of that. We are working hard to get that information out to our public and do direct mailings to all of those within 500 feet with information on how they can or what the options are, which are numerous, to participate in that forthcoming hearing.
I would ask, has everyone responded back to the staff's request for whether or not you feel comfortable personally attending that meeting in person?
Commissioner Wade, we did receive 100% response from that. So thank you all for responding to Bella.
Good. The other item we had on our agenda for tonight was we were going to thank Steve and Kathy. We were unable to contact both of them, so that will be deferred to a later date when they can either be present at a public meeting or we can do it in some other fashion. So if there are no other questions or no other business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
We'll call the roll. Commissioner Teskey,
Aye.
Commissioner Scissors,
Aye.
Commissioner Gatzos,
Aye, and I'm looking forward to my payday next meeting.
yeah, there you go. Commissioner Ehlers,
Aye.
and I am an aye as well. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we got through this reasonably well.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.